Plenty has been said about the new MacBook Pros Apple announced at their Unleashed event, and I'm going to tell you something you likely already know. These machines are super impressive, but I'm also going to tell you that you should not upgrade. Hey, Andrew here, and I'm probably going to sound like the lame duck here, but I'm going to tell you why you should not upgrade your Mac to the new M1 Pro and M1 Max MacBook Pros. So sit down, get subscribed, or stand up, I guess, if you're already sitting, and let me break it down. Firstly, is that like bigly? I don't know. Firstly, Apple has done what most people expected. They released new versions of their larger, more pro version of their MacBook Pro laptop line. And it appears they did indeed unleash the M1 processor. I'll say in summary, these things do look super impressive. Let's talk about why they're so impressive though. Both new MacBook Pros have more ports, but the fact that among those ports is an HDMI and SD card slot does not tip the scales, at least for me. If you simply need to plug into an external display or throw an SD card in there, no dongle needed. But I, for one, made the investment last year in a USB docking station that has those ports on it and a $20 dongle to use when I need those ports if I'm not at my desk. I came to the conclusion that my USB-C dock is super convenient also because I only need to connect one cable to my Mac to connect all the things when I'm at my desk. And I never felt that having to use a dongle once in a while really diminishes my quality of tech life at all. Actually, the dongle is valuable because I can also connect USB Type A things to my Mac if I need to, which you would still need a dongle to do with the new MacBook Pros. But enough saying the word dongle, the additional ports are sure to please a lot of people. I mean, that's why Apple put them on there. And I will acknowledge that having Thunderbolt ports on both sides of the laptop is a pretty nice touch. And the return of MagSafe is awesome. Not only because MagSafe was always awesome, but it now includes a fast charging option that can charge the Mac 50% in just 30 minutes. And also, per 9to5 Mac, you cannot fast charge over USB-C, so you'll have to utilize the MagSafe to achieve this. Okay, so ports are awesome, and the keyboard changed slightly with the removal of the touch bar and now has full-size function keys. I have half-size function keys, and my life remains unchanged. Of course, we need to talk about what is inside these new Macs, and there is a choice of the two new versions of the M1 Pro and the M1 Max. If you ask me, that naming convention, super cheesy. But it does align with their other product categories and does help branding better than naming them something like the M1 1179RU Alpha. So, whatever. These seem to be larger, more capable versions of the M1, based basically on the same architecture. It appears that there is more cores on both the compute and graphics side of things and a larger pool of unified memory. Not to mention some insane memory bandwidth speeds. The cores, memory bandwidth speeds, and the claimed thermal performance of these new chips put them into a class of their own. Again, if these are actual representations, then the performance to power consumption charts Apple showed for these is kind of mind-blowing, and I honestly can't wait until some of the actual good tech YouTubers out there publish some videos with some benchmarks that are sure to blow our minds. But that being said, the M1 was a huge leap in its own right. I bought that M1 MacBook Air partly because of some of the performance boosts it got from the M1, and after having it for almost a year, I am still very happy with its performance. Now, I posted a couple reviews with my thoughts after different periods of time over the last year, and I'll tell you, I have not backtracked on my thoughts. These new laptops now have a mini LED display with insane max brightness specs and finally a 1080p webcam. You might be thinking, what the hell is mini LED? Apple called it ProMotion XDR displays, but that's just their branding for their mini LED adaptive refresh displays with up to 120 Hertz. We were first introduced to these with the latest line of the 12.9-inch M1 iPad Pros, and they were super impressive. With 1,000 nits of sustained brightness and 1,600 nits max, they're right with that new iPad Pro. Now this is something I want. I love the MacBook Air, but 400 nits of max brightness does get annoying at times. Why is this impressive, you might ask, and why should you care? When viewing things like HDR content, the brightness does seem to be important as it impacts color accuracy. To put it into more perspective, I'm shopping for a new 32-inch 4K monitor for my home setup, and the few ones that fit into my price range are only about 300 to 400 nits max brightness. And like I just said, my MacBook Air is brighter, so I want that new display. If anyone has a 32-inch 4K monitor recommendation, hit me up in the comments. I need some suggestions. Then we have the 1080p Facetime camera, which, okay, maybe it's just meh. We know already that the M1's image processing is good. I haven't seen any crazy reviews from the M1 iMacs talking about how impressive these new 1080 cameras are. I don't have to look at me on the other end anyway. And if you know me, you probably know what I'm gonna say about these. There's no ultra wide lens, which means no center stage. So that's still an iPad only thing. Okay, that might make sense, actually. Now you may be saying that I just gave a bunch of reasons as to why you should upgrade, or I should upgrade for that matter, and if the story stopped there, I might be convinced. But listen, one of the best things about having a laptop and about the M1 chip is the battery performance. The M1 Pro and Max seem to have similar performance to power ratios, and those crazy bright screens I'm sure are not helping battery life. But the fact is that if you are in the market for a portable that has great battery, you're probably buying the MacBook Air or even the M1 13-inch MacBook Pro, because the new 14-inch MacBook Pro is rated at less battery, a whole hour less than the Air. And the 16-inch is a slightly different story. You're going to get more than all these new Macs. So when the question comes down to it, how much are you willing to pay for that much extra battery? The price surely will tip the scales if you were still on the fence. Where the MacBook Air starts at a budget-friendly $1,000, the 14-inch MacBook Pro now starts at double that at $2,000, and the 16-inch at $2,500. And of course, those are all at the base configurations. Minimum amount of CPU and graphics cores, unified memory, and storage. For the sake of our conversation, I have the M1 MacBook Air with 8 CPU and GPU cores, 1 terabyte of storage, and 16 gigs of unified memory. That ran me $1,650. Spec'd out similarly, the 14-inch MacBook Pro with base model M1 Pro chip, 1 terabyte of storage and 16 gigabytes of unified memory will run you $2,200, a jump of $550. And for fun, the 16-inch MacBook Pro with base model M1 chip, 1 terabyte of storage, and 16 gigs of memory, up to $2,700. That's over $1,000 more. And that's all before we get into the M1 Max chip territory, where things start to get really pricey, and you probably have to be a real power user in need of a major upgrade, I think, to justify spending that kind of coin. I may be watching the refurbished store, as usually you can snag a Mac for 15% less than a brand new one. In the end, the new MacBook Pros are awesome, but the M1 MacBook Air still seems like the best value Mac available, especially if you can grab one refurbished. Hey, if you hung out this far, thank you for watching, and consider subscribing if you got any value from this video. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.